Just as families were flying home from Christmas in December 2023, two women were stopped by customs at Birmingham Airport. They had flown in from New York. With a layover in Paris, they looked like just another pair of holiday travelers. But the officers were suspicious of their huge bags, so they stopped them for a quick check and asked them to open their suitcases. The strange thing was that the women claimed they didn't know the codes. This was what tipped off the officers. They immediately cut the locks, and inside they found 70 pounds of cannabis, tightly shrink wrapped and packed to the top. This was a major drug bust, so how did two women end up smuggling that much cannabis across international borders, and how did it get through JFK undetected? To find out, we have to go back a few days. One of the women detained at Birmingham Airport was Levi-April Whalley. But to understand how she got there, we have to rewind to October 2023. Back then, Levi was running out of options. She was recently let go from her nursing job in Blackburn, and she was 7 months pregnant. She had no income and she was scraping by each day. Her bank account was nearly empty. And with the baby due soon, she was worried about how she was going to manage. That's when her closest friend, Sophie Bannister, reached out with what she called a solution to their every problem. The two had known each other for years, and if anyone could convince Levi to do something crazy and risky, it was Sophie. Sophie told her she had received an offer to take a short trip to New York, and not just any trip, it was fully paid for, which included flights, hotel, and even spending money. All they had to do was collect a couple of suitcases from there and fly back to the UK. The payout was several £1,000s in cash. Levi didn't say yes at that time because it sounded too good to be true and she wasn't naive, but when you're down to your last few pounds and about to become a mother, you cannot really say no to risky solutions. So Levi thought about it, maybe for a day, and then she said yes. Sophie explained the whole plan to Levi, which sounded quite simple. The bags they would be bringing back would contain cannabis. They were told it would be sealed, compressed, and packed into brand new luggage. According to Sophie, who was in contact with the organizer, the operation had been done before. They knew what they were doing and they were going to make sure nothing could raise alarms at the airports. They were also told they would not have to handle the product or meet any strangers, just fly in, enjoy the trip, and fly back. Levy had doubts, of course, she did, but every time she tried to talk about the risks, Sophie was there to reassure her. She would tell her that the guys running it were professionals, everything was already taken care of. They just needed two people who looked ordinary, two people like them. And at that point, the idea of walking blindly into something illegal started to feel less scary than staying broke with a baby on the way, so they went. They packed their bags and left for New York. Once in New York, Levi and Sophie made the most of their vacation. They went shopping, sightseeing, pretending it was just a girls' trip. While they were enjoying their time in New York, the plan to smuggle drugs was already in motion. After 3 days in the city, they returned to JFK Airport to fly home. The suitcases they were carrying were not theirs. They had been handed over to them just hours earlier, exactly as promised. But Levi and Sophie didn't know what exactly was inside, how the drugs were stuffed into them, and they didn't even want to. They had been told not to ask questions, just carry the bags. That's it. They checked in, everything went smoothly, they handed over their passports, the airline tagged the luggage, and the bags disappeared onto the conveyor belt. Then came security. They passed it through without a hitch. At no point were they stopped or questioned. Whatever was inside those bags had been expertly hidden. The next flight was just a short layover in Paris. They assumed the hardest part was behind them. But it was not JFK that caught them, it was Birmingham. When they landed back in the UK just before New Year's, everything seemed normal. They retrieved their luggage and headed toward the exit. But customs officers were already watching them. Out of the whole airport, only these two women were quietly pulled aside and led into a private screening room. That's where the plan started to fall apart. The customs officers asked them to open their bags, which they should have done, but the problem was neither of them knew the passcode. At first they pretended to forget, then they admitted they never had it in the first place. They said the bags were not really theirs and that they were just carrying some watches for a friend. That explanation didn't hold up. It was a big red flag for the officers because they had seen this tactic before, so they brought out bolt cutters and opened the luggage themselves. Inside both bags, they found dozens of packets, vacuum sealed, tightly packed, and all were identical. There were around 70 in total. Officers pulled them out one by one. Turns out, it was not designer merchandise or knockoff accessories as Levi and Sophie claimed it to be. This was large-scale drug smuggling. Tests confirmed that they were carrying 70 pounds of high-grade cannabis valued at over £160,000. Levi and Sophie were searched, separated and placed under arrest. Their phones were seized, and just like that, their vacation ended in handcuffs. Back at the station, police launched a full digital forensic investigation. They added their voice notes, messages, and flight records as evidence. After evaluating the case, the National Crime Agency joined in. And now, the two women were suspected smugglers in a major trafficking case. They were put to trial, and both of them knew no shopping trip or Instagram story could now help them explain away 70 pounds of cannabis. Levi-April Whalley and Sophie Bannister were presented in Preston Crown Court in early April 2025. It has been 15 months since their arrest at Birmingham Airport, and that week, they were about to find out if they would walk free or head to prison. In the courtroom, prosecutors began by laying out the facts. They talked about the 70 pounds of high-grade cannabis split between two women, packed in heat-sealed bricks, and hidden in brand new luggage. Photos of the seizure were shown in court about tight, uniform packages layered under personal items. Whalley's bag held 35 pounds and Bannister's held 35.5 pounds. After that, the prosecutors presented the digital evidence. Forensic experts recovered dozens of messages exchanged before, during, and after the trip. The pair talked openly about how much money they expected, how they were getting an all-expenses-paid trip, and how they planned to handle customs. At least one message even referenced how they would have spent the payout. The prosecution argued this proved full knowledge of the operation and crushed any defense that they were tricked or forced into it. But the defense team didn't back down from a fight. They described the women as first-time offenders caught in a scheme they didn't fully understand. They said both were financially desperate and vulnerable. Sophie was portrayed as the initial contact, who was approached by a third party with ties to organised crime. She then convinced Levi to join. The court heard how Levi, who was pregnant and unemployed, saw this as her only way to survive. The defense insisted they were used, groomed even, by more experienced traffickers, who still remain unnamed. But prosecutors did not budge from their argument. They said the volume of drugs and the coordination involved showed clear intent. The judge on the case was Judge Richard Archer, who patiently listened while flipping through all the reports and files. Then he delivered his verdict. He told the women they were fully aware of what was in the suitcases and that they expected a significant financial advantage. He criticized their decision to move ahead with the plan, saying they gave little thought to the consequences. Still, the judge acknowledged several mitigating factors. They pleaded guilty, saving court time. They had no prior convictions. Levi had since become a mother. Bannister too has faced huge personal challenges in the months following her arrest. He noted they have already lived with this weight for over a year, out on bail, under scrutiny, and unsure of their future. In the end, he gave them a lenient sentence. Sophie Bannister was sentenced to 20 months in prison, suspended for 18 months, along with 200 hours of unpaid work and 30 days rehabilitation. Levi received 16 months, suspended for 18 months, plus 80 hours of community service and 10 days of rehab programs. If either reoffends or breaks the terms, the prison sentence will be activated. Both women are free for now. But with criminal records, a ruined nursing career, and public scrutiny, the hard part of their life is not over yet. After walking out of Preston Crown Court without a jail sentence, Levi-April Whalley and Sophie Bannister did not exactly lay low. Instead, they headed straight to Instagram. Their first post showed them smiling, dancing, and sticking their tongues out like they had just come back from a vacation, not like they had been convicted of smuggling 70 pounds of cannabis. So one video showed them saying they proved how strong they were. Another post said they had survived the most difficult 15 months of their lives and are ready to enjoy their summer and their future. They tried to sound confident, maybe a little too confident, for two people who narrowly avoided prison. As expected, the internet did not give them a kind response. On Reddit, the case went viral. People started calling them out for what they thought it was. Just a plain example of white privilege. One user said if two black men had been caught doing the same thing, they would have been serving years in prison, not walking free. Even people who don't usually comment on crime news were stunned at how lightly the two were treated. But Levi and Sophie don't seem too bothered by the backlash. In fact, within weeks of the court case, they started promoting their OnlyFans pages. For them, it's their only way to make money now that regular jobs are no longer an option. Some followers laugh it off, but plenty of people criticize them for trying to turn a criminal case into a fame opportunity. Levi also gives interviews to media outlets. She appeared on ITV's This Morning, where she claimed it was financial pressure and pregnancy that made her say yes to the job. She talked about how lucky she felt to have been caught in the UK instead of abroad, where the punishment could have been much worse. She also said she wants to warn others not to fall for offers like the one they took, claiming they didn't really understand what they were getting into. Still, most people were angry at the situation. Viewers slammed the TV interview online, saying shows should not give criminals a platform. People accused the two young women of profiting from crime and turning their story into a brand. Some said the justice system failed. Others said it worked because now everyone knows their names and no one forgets what they did. What do you think? Tell me in the comments below, and before you go, make sure to subscribe to my channel for more crime stories. Goodbye for now,